Before I start, let me just add a couple disclaimers because this video will be talking about some pretty serious topics. Also, for specifically one instance, I advise no one eat while watching this video. You will thank me later. I think for the most part, a lot of us realize that there are a lot of shady things happening behind the scenes in football. A lot of people with power whose intentions only poison the beautiful game. But recently, a man by the name of Romain Molina has opened our eyes even more to the corruptions and disgusting acts that these people have done. To kind of explain where I'm going with this, Romain Molina had recently just exposed the entirety of football on a Twitter space. A Twitter space is basically just like a host your own podcast type deal. And for those of you who have seen the other Twitter spaces as of recent, I could totally understand why some might disregard Molina's leaks. But Molina is an investigative journalist who works for the New York Times and The Guardian. He's been investigating the dark side of football for years now. His work has influenced change within multiple FAs and officials. But enough of the backstory. Let's just get into the list of leaks. A striker from Montpellier, Eli Wahi, was not fired from Caen's youth setup for physically assaulting a supervisor at the academy. Instead, after the physical threats, he brought over some secondary school friends in the washrooms to undress and pleasured themselves in front of him. This isn't part of the leaks, but a month ago he was actually accused of punching a woman in the nose. A Liga team covered up a pedophilia scandal in their youth academy. The victim in hand was actually brainwashed by the time law enforcement got involved. And then, I guess to hide things even more, the club sent the player back to their home country. Here's another leak. One of the largest academies in the Democratic Republic of Congo is managed by a pedophilia ring. An international coach was caught red-handed raping two 13-year-olds in the middle of a tournament. And apparently, a well-liked and famous French personality participated in covering up the story. This leak comes from Colombia. The boss of Colombia's refereeing is a pedophile. Also, apparently, a Spezia player disappeared. This incident is leaked with human trafficking issues and an academy founded in Nigeria by the Spezia club president. With these leaks coming out, I think more people are realizing just how common pedophilia is. And people will wonder, what makes people this goddamn sick in the head? I think it's pretty simple to really answer that question though. It's a sense of power that these people have. And not only just power, but control. They have control over their victims. These victims who have suffered from grooming have been threatened, manipulated to absolutely no return. And because of the constant threatening and manipulation, these victims feel like they don't really have a way out. And sometimes they really don't. And it's so cruel and truly repulsive knowing that the people with the power and the control are doing this with no worry in the world that they'll ever be caught. You have to understand that these leaks are just a fraction of what actually happens in the world. This isn't just sports, this is everywhere, man. So a good amount of these next ones are in regards to sexual harassment and sexual abuse. 400 plus players currently in the Premier League, Championship, Liga, and Ligue 2 have been raped multiple times in their youth. Some have even contracted injuries and even disease. This is an issue that is 2 decades old, and apparently Molina will release the first story sometime in December. But again, going back to how these incidents are hidden so goddamn well. A German study found that there are over 200,000 cases of sexual abuse against children and adolescents in sports alone. The Haitian National Football Center has a shocking amount of sexual abuse allegations. As youth athletes are very dependent on people above, it leads them to being easily manipulated to do whatever the higher up wanted them to do. Because if an athlete does defy orders, the higher power will do everything they can to ruin this player's career. And even if the higher ups don't act, these players are scared of their own careers coming to an end. There are 34 alleged victims with 10 perpetrators, which includes former Haitian FA president Yves Jean-Bart. He was banned from football for life after being found guilty of sexually abusing and harassing young female players, some even underaged. Jean-Bart claimed he wanted to develop football, more importantly women's football. But instead he used his power to ruin the careers and ruin the lives of many Haitian girls who will forever be plagued by memories of what this man did to them. One incident involves a girl who was called up to a hotel by Jean-Bart. When the girl first arrived, this disgusting animal decided to give her a pack of panties. He then pulled the girl towards him, and as a result, the girl pushed him back away. A couple days later, she was basically deemed invisible amongst the entire Haitian football center. Jean Barthes had used his influence to manipulate his colleagues and probably some of this girl's friends to never speak to her again. But this is nowhere near the only instance, whether in Haiti or some other country. There's another example where sexual abuse is rampant in the Mongolian FA involving players of the U15 girls team. The U15s. Molina in one of his leaks said, FIFA claims to push for women's football, but does very little to protect the girls and women from abuse. But this Haitian Football Center story was something from 10 months ago. I just wanted to give you the full backstory because A, not many people know of this incident, and B, for context of what I'm about to say. One of Molina's leaks include how Megan Rapinoe was not bothered by Haitian girls being raped. She apparently prefers earning money over defending these young girls. Now, obviously, this is an allegation, but Rapinoe's silence and the fact that she's limited her comments on Instagram doesn't really help her case. But if true, holy shit, how incredibly ironic coming from someone who claims to fight for social justice. Oh, and also, another incident involves Ferland Mendy hitting a woman to the ground, giving her a head trauma. There's another detail to this story, but there is absolutely no way I could reword this so that YouTube does not demonetize this video in a heartbeat. Apparently also, before this incident, the player had assaulted another woman, and his club actually hid these details in order to sell him. I don't know if it was Le Havre or Lyon. The ironic part about all of this is that Ferland Mendy reposted something made by Edouard Mendy regarding the Benjamin Mendy cases and how their images, Ferland and Edouard, were being used in stories about Benjamin Mendy. Now, this shouldn't take away, however, from the fact that journalist racism is more rampant than you think. Now, speaking of Benjamin Mendy, did you know that Manchester City actually knew about these cases long before anyone else did? And they still decided not to suspend him. They only decided to act upon Benjamin Mendy's charges when Cheshire Police made a statement. But this isn't the first time something like this has ever happened. Lee Hughes of West Brom caused a car crash that killed one person and he fled the scene. This man went on to play another 17 matches, helping West Brom to promotion. And then later on, this man was sentenced to 6 years. Adam Johnson, I feel like people kind of forget about this detail. He was initially suspended on suspicions of having sexual activity with a minor. And then 2 weeks later, his suspension was removed. This man was now able to play for Sunderland despite the fact that the Sunderland chief executive literally had receipts about how Adam Johnson had admitted to grooming a minor. Now, I just want to give you one final warning. If you're eating right now, stop, because you definitely won't be wanting to after I say what I'm about to say. So apparently, a French international staged parties where he would, and not only that, he would film himself doing it. There was one incident where he forced someone to partake in such a disgusting act. And for one, right, I'm just saying, I don't think that was the only person he forced. There is no goddamn way that people actually consented to this shit. And here's another awful leak. A minor was raped and forced into abortion at an international center of f***ing FIFA. I don't think people realize just how good these people up higher than us are at hiding these things. I mean, I'll give you an example outside of football. College. Sexual harassment is extremely common in college. Most of the time, many reports just kind of get thrown to the side, and in other cases, these victims are punished. And going back to the sexual abuse upon minors, it is outright disgusting, yet also saddening, because the general public, like you and I, will never truly know the extent of how bad it is. I mean, right now, while I'm recording, there's probably an incident happening. While you're watching this, there's probably something happening, and we'll never know. Alright, so now let's talk about corruption for a second, because there's a couple leaks here. So some international games in Asia are fixed. Am I surprised? Sadly not. And as a result of this, many players have actually refused to join their national teams. I mean, for a long time, and it could still very much be happening, but Vietnam had a huge problem with corruption in football. There hasn't been any news about it ever since sports betting was legalized in Vietnam, but I'm sure it still happens. And speaking of Asia, you guys remember the 2018 World Cup? You remember the qualifiers? You probably don't remember the first qualifier, East Timor versus Mongolia, where East Timor fielded a bunch of Brazilian players that they paid off to defeat Mongolia. East Timor would be found guilty and all of their matches prior would be deemed 3-0 defeats, but by the time that happened, it was way too late for Mongolia, who had been eliminated in the first match of the World Cup qualifiers. It gets even better though. Leagues in Southeast Asian, Eastern European, and Latin American countries are fixed. And apparently Morocco have a significant influence in the African Confederation, where they quote-unquote can do whatever they want. This one's a pretty common thing amongst a lot of African countries, but this one's a more specific example. Mario Lemina apparently received a large sum of cash to play for Gabon. Also, the massive media outrage surrounding the Qatar World Cup is both political and financed by people and organizations who wish harm upon the country. Now, this shouldn't take away from the atrocities that this nation has done in preparation for the World Cup, but I absolutely do not doubt there are many people who are talking about the outrage with the wrong intentions. Saudi Arabia. This one's pretty interesting. The Kenyan FA have 16 bank accounts, as opposed to 1 or 2 from most other FAs. Not to mention, some of those Kenyan bank accounts are hidden, so who knows what they do with that money. After Senegal complained against an overage player in the U17 African team they faced, the player's national team decided to deem this player deceased, but he is actually still playing in the U21 side of that same national team. Again, I think we all realize that there are tons of issues behind the scenes that poison this sport. And when you go over all these leaks, it just opens your eye to them even more. And just remember again that these leaks are just reported incidents. There is so much more that is happening. All these people that have been mentioned in these leaks are disgusting animals, not even human beings, man. These people need to be removed from power, but unfortunately, it's not like the next person coming in to take over is any better. It's just a never-ending cycle of disgusting, poisonous animals. Molina said there's more leaks to come in March, so it'll be interesting to see what happens then. But let's all just hope that Molina makes it by then. Let's just hope this man has the goddamn Avengers protecting him. Because, I mean, he just exposed a good amount of people with a lot of power. But I'd love to hear what you guys think down below. There's a lot of other leaks that I didn't put in this video because I just didn't feel like they needed to be talked about. They're just really not as important. But a shout out to all our patrons, of course: Adroit, Daniel Ortiz, Joseph Bonfante, Victor, Dominic Griffin, Lewis, Big Bird, Cash Getty, and Tomicus. If you'd like to join the Patreon, there'll be a link in the annotations and a link in the description. Follow me on Twitter if you'd like. You can follow me on Instagram too. Follow me on TikTok, still trying to get to 3,000, and you can follow my Twitch. But until then, I'll see you guys.